Welcome to Modern Mystic Messages. I'm Teresa. Thank you so much for stopping by and clicking on the video. If this is your first time here, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. And what's up, Soul Familia? We're going to get into the compendium of the Emerald Tablets into chapter 2 today. And also, I'm going to do a reading for the collective today. But before we did that, I wanted to talk briefly about something that I realize I promised y'all whenever I come across something good, I'm not going to gatekeep. And I kind of unintentionally been gatekeeping a little bit. When we went through chapter 1 in the Emerald Tablets, we were talking about like aliens and angels, like what we think of as being angels, what we've been taught as angels are most likely extraterrestrial beings of a different form than us or appearing to us differently. We know in the Bible they were represented as coming in flames and smoke and fire and appearing all kinds of different ways. Even in Ezekiel, they described some of their vehicles as well as some of the beings, and or it talks about the angel of the Lord coming to visit various ones in the scriptures. And yesterday, I got to watching a channel that I hadn't recommended to you all, but there was a very, very good video that came up, and it really made me start thinking. It's a little bit on the conspiracy side, but then again, all of this stuff is connected. The channel is called My Lunch Break, and you'll see that I'm tagging it on this video. I highly, highly, highly cannot recommend enough that you go to that channel and check out some of the videos. If any of the titles just grab your attention, dig in wherever you choose to go in it, because I have yet to see a bad video that this brother has done. But along the lines of what we've been talking about as far as who the Anunnaki were and potentially who Thoth is or was, and some of the things that have been done around the planet. I kind of went in and watched, I did kind of binge watch a little bit. I went back about a month into this brother's uploads, and I started with one, it was called 18 Levels Underground. Now, I had watched that a month ago when it first aired, and I didn't really think about it, but now that we're getting into this portion of when Thoth left the land of Kim and kind of where we're going to see where he kind of spilled over into other areas of the world, I think it's kind of relevant to look at. But if you want to start where I started, like I said, this channel has been active for a while. So anywhere you choose to go in the videos are fine. But I started with 18 Levels Underground. And then after that, there's several others called Buried. Let me see. Um, that was one of the titles that I looked at about a month ago. And then Buried Old World Cities, Erasing History, and Angels Built the Old World. That's the one he just did a couple days ago or yesterday, whichever it was. Now, this is a question that, and my mentor had brought this to my attention a while back, and I had been thinking about it as well. And it's one of those kind of things where we've got to break our accepted programming and start using our common sense and our thinking capacity. Now, we are basically forced at some point. I mean, especially in the United States, school is mandatory. In other countries, you have to kind of pay for it. But all of us that went to school, we get some form of history education. And a lot of the things that they be telling us, we accept it at face value because you got to learn it for the test. But if you go back now that you're a thinking adult and look at some of the things that they've been telling you, you can begin to see that it's not just religion that's been giving us the okey doke. It's all been giving us the okey doke. The timelines are messed up, the years and dates are messed up. But here's the thing that this brother focuses on a lot, or has been, in the information that I've been looking at, and I think it's so fascinating. But I want you to stop and think. If you live anywhere, wherever you live, that has old buildings, like, and I mean really old buildings, like you think about Chicago, Los Angeles, New York, and you look in those places. Now, New York is known to have the brownstones and all that in sub-level stuff. However, think about California. Go when you go out to like Los Angeles, San Francisco, and all of those places. Now they tell us that the gold rush happened in like the I think the mid 1700s through the mid 1800s. It was in somewhere in that time span. Again, I learned it for the test. I don't remember the exact dates of the gold rush, but they certainly none of it really goes much further back than 1776, because this country has only officially been a country for 240 years. But at the time, what they describe to us in history, when they talk about settling the West, the wild, wild West, and basically people had to go out homesteading and all of that, and let them tell it, all of that out West was just indigenous people and buffalo and wolves and mad terrain, and it was complete wilderness and nothing was there, and it was all supposedly settled by the forefathers. Okay, so why is it that in almost every major city you go to and you start looking at these old buildings, and some of them have already been torn down, many of them are renovated, but even when they start doing the renovations, when you look at them, look at them buildings and see, very often at street level, you'll see these really weird, short, little capped off windows where literally it's like the window was started about 18 inches. And some of them, it ain't even where the window starts 18 inches off the ground. The ground literally bisects where the old window was. So all you can see is this much. There's no sill there, there's no jamb. There's literally like where it's like that building is sat on top of something else. And you look at all these elaborate, especially go through, look at the train stations and the old subway stations, super elaborate buildings, even just here in the United States. And they're built with old style architecture. Some of them are so elaborate, it looks like you standing in looking at the Sistine Chapel or something. And yet they would tell us that those buildings were just put up since the 1800s. We only in 2025 right now. So if it was so wild and uncivilized and nothing was there, and it was just having to go out, and basically they was building, going out with their wagons and they whatever, and then they had to literally cut down trees to build their little cabins and fight off Indians and mine for the gold and do all. Where do they have the time to build all them buildings? It's a good question, ain't it? Somebody ain't telling us something right about this history, but guess what? The church has understood, and historians have understood. They can pretty much tell us whatever they want. They can basically roll out a brand new timeline every 3, 4, 500 years if they choose to, because once 3 generations have passed away, nobody's going to remember the truth. And what this brother has done has gone back and done extensive research for historical buildings all around the world, and a lot of them ain't just historical buildings. He makes a very valid point. According to history, when we sit in those classes and they look at the censuses and estimate whatever they had going on back then, let them tell it, 3, 4, 500 years ago, the population of the planet was like maybe 10 million people or so. And he's helping you understand that they've done these resets often. But when they go back, even when they start looking at buildings that were renovated in the 1800s throughout Europe, but then you look around and it's supposed to be some kind of courthouse, but really it's huge. It's so grandiose and it's so large. And when they really start looking in the history of the buildings, those are old castles. In places you see huge elaborate buildings with all the sculpture and all the gold and all of this refinement, in places that even to this day, the whole area around it, they living in virtually huts except for these elaborate buildings. something ain't right with that history, and something ain't right with what was left over, because why in the world would they even need a building that vast as an administrative building unless it was truly a castle? And like I said, they're so big and so elaborate. Who was building these things? Considering there was no uh no motorized machinery and all of get no gas power, no pneumatic drills and hydraulic pumps and all of the things that we have now. Let them tell it. These, you go back 200 or 300 years, people were riding in horses, donkey carts, and burning pig fat, and yet you have all these huge elaborate castles and palaces and all these things that are going up. The stories don't match. And one of the things that I found was so fascinating in that last couple videos he did, and I didn't even realize it, when you start looking at some of the history that they tell you, when you start researching the history online about these particular buildings, you'll start seeing where literally AI is writing the history, or whatever they've made up or put in, because you'll see a few small, like several builders, all of them named George, or it'd be like George and Robert, same last name, so 3 or 4 builders of the same last name, huge elaborate palaces and castles that they claim were built in 1 year by one architect who simultaneously had 15 other projects also going on in that same country. Even now, that would be impossible to pull off, but certainly not possible to pull off when you were dealing with old world supposed artisans that did not have, like I said, the power tools and the things that we have now. Much less, like, think about the theories that they used to put out there about how the pyramids were built, because they don't want to accept what was said in the Babylonian and Sumerian and the Akkadian text, or the Anunnaki text, that Thoth built the pyramids, and what he said in the Emerald Tablets. They don't want to admit to that, because then they would have to admit to the rest of that part of the story. So they tried to tell us that all of that was done by involuntary workers, I'll say, because we can't say that word on here, but it was all done by involuntary workers with horses and pulling that stuff, all of them, those huge elaborate stones up the side of the thing to form these pyramids, these interlocking buildings, and all it does not make sense. But one of the reasons I wanted to point out this brother's channel and the videos is because, in addition to just talking about it, he's not just talking, he goes through and shows the buildings, looks up online or in the history books, in whatever information you can dig up about these buildings, to show you what he's talking about the way they're literally altering the history of the buildings. And it kind of makes more sense than not that our extraterrestrial predecessors, progenitors, whatever you want to call them, angels, were the ones that were actually doing a lot of this. Especially when, and one of the things that he brought out that I hadn't really thought about, remember in history class when we go back and look, especially in the like European history, all even to like whether it's like Czech, Hungarian, Russian, all throughout Europe and the Middle East, in the Eastern Bloc nations, the crests were super important. And a lot of those crests had what on them? Dragons and griffins. Now, they would have us believe, and the churches have what? Gargoyles. All over Europe. And I mean, they're in the United States too. Don't get me wrong. Go to a lot of them old buildings. Go to the old churches and the old whatever, the old train stations and the old libraries and the old courthouses and all that are still remaining here. And when you look up, you're going to find gargoyles and griffins and dragons all over all of that stuff. Why? And they paint the little cherubic angels and all that, but they have huge beings that are larger, like 12 times larger than humans, and all this elaborate artwork that it does not make any sense that you could actually think that it was changed. I mean, it was done by human hands without any kind of elaborate tools. Yeah, they did have master sculptors that managed to do a lot of things without power tools, but the average person, like I said, those people are super renowned and their works are in museums. There's not that many basic architects that was out putting up buildings 100, 200, 300 years ago that were doing that level of sculpture all over the outside of these buildings and everything else. It does not make sense. The stories, the backstories that they're giving us as to how these buildings came into being, what they originally were, and how they got here. And it's just, yeah. When you look at that, it's very clear to see that they are erasing and altering our history. They're not telling us all of the story. And I just really feel like, well, one is it's beautiful, beautiful buildings. It works. And I love the fact that he's not really preachy about it. He's just showing you the buildings and the information he was able to find, and then let your common sense connect the dots or not, as you will. So I really, really enjoy a lot of that information. So I just wanted to jump on real quick and share it with you. And I'm not going to keep going on about it because without actually showing you the videos, there's not really a lot that I can say, but I will go ahead and I'm going to tag the channel on this video as well as the latest upload that he had there in case you want to check it out. I highly encourage it. And I really think that you will, it's an eye opener. It really, really, it was a huge eye opener for me as well. But yeah, that's all I wanted to bring out for today. And like I said, I will have another couple of uploads coming here shortly. So I do encourage you to check out the chapter 2 of the Emerald Tablets. I mean, the compendium of the Emerald Tablets that we're getting into, as well as the upcoming reading for the collective. But until then, family, take care of yourselves. Peace and blessings to you. I love you very much. Namaste.